balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. So one of the things that, again, a little inside baseball here, one of the things that happens behind the scenes is that when I go to start streaming, and this particularly goes to Rumble, but also because Rumble streams out to YouTube and X for me, Facebook, you guys catch the stream ahead of the Rumble shot. Anyway, one of the things that I have to do is I have to tell Rumble it's time for you to stream, and so there's a button that I have to push. Well, here lately, 3 Chevy's been one of my longtime Whiskey Warrior P1s in Rumble. He'll sit there and if I don't get to the button in time, he'll be like, Rick needs to push a button. And if I get to the button in time, he'll say something like, Rick, done push the button. Well, every time he does that, he reminds me. Now, most of you know that I have kids, and they're all grown up now, for the most part. And one of them is already proposed. Where he's getting married next year. And anyway, he used to have this Caterpillar. It was one of those plastic toy Caterpillars that played like tunes, or you could switch it and have it play. It was an electronic toy. You could have it play tunes. You could have it read ABCs. You could have it do, a couple of different things. And anyway, this thing, whenever it would be turned on, but not in use. And that's the key. It would be turned on, but not in use. And it would sit there over and over and over again to remind you that it was turned on. It would continually say, probably like every 2 minutes or so, please press a button. And then a couple minutes later, it'd go, please press a button. It was designed, obviously, to engage the kid, okay, and also to let the parents know that, hey, don't drain your batteries. This thing is turned on. But it used to drive me nuts. It used to drive me nuts. And so, anyway, every time 3 Chevy talks about the buttons, that's the thing that I go to in my head is that stupid ass freaking Caterpillar thing. Please press a button. Anyway, so there you go, 3 Chevy. You're burned into my brain. All right, folks. Let's go ahead and get things kicked off here. And I just realized that I have not switched over the pledge. So give me just a moment here to get the next person up. And it happens to be 3 Chevy. So 3 Chevy is the person up on tap for the pledge. This is great. Nice timing. The universe has put us into a balance. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, all right, folks, let's go ahead and get things kicked off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Obviously, it's 3 Chevy, so if you would, please, if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, like me, and follow along. Oh, place your hand over your heart and follow along with 3 Chevy as he pledges allegiance to the button. Here we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And, of course, I thank 3 Chevy for providing us with that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style and take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and attach it to an email Send that email off to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. Send it off to fans at AmericanPerspective.online, and I will get you into the rotation. Alrighty. Tonight, of course, is Jarhead 13's favorite night of the week. It is...
Down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
That's right. It's Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And tonight, I'm drinking the Bullet Bourbon. There it is. Bullet Bourbon. Frontier Whiskey. And, you know, it's Kentucky Straight bourbon whiskey. You guys have freaking made me into a bourbon person. I'm a bourbon guy now. Anyway, and of course, it is in the True Grit Roots Network glass with the stones, because, of course, it takes stones to drink with whiskey. Ah, that's some good stuff. Oh, yes, and the Rumblers, of course, are saying it's No Pants Wednesday. They take off other articles of clothing on Wednesday, too, but I'll just keep with the pants. Anyway. All right. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have to hang out for the entire show because the pet of the week tonight at the end is, well, I'm glad that the person is in the chat. Let's just put it that way because it's a tribute. Anyway. So tonight, of course, for our headline sponsor is TGRN, True Grit Roots Network. That's what it stands for. We have two signature channels that we play. One is Walter Trout Blues Rock Radio. The other one is Dallas Moore Outlaw Radio. And yes, both channels do play rock, but Walter Trout is a little more blues rockish. Dallas Moore is just outlaw kind of stuff. And also a lot of country as well, which is pretty cool. But I want to know, because I'm kind of curious, are you one of the people who has made it to where we have close to 3,000 listening hours for this month across both stations? Because if you aren't, I'm telling you, you're going to join a large company of individuals should you try out one or both of those stations. And if you want to try them out, you can head on over to tgrn.net. That's our home. You can listen right through your browser right there. Both of them, both the stations are playing right there. They have little widgets that you can click on and listen right there in your browser. Or you can download the apps. There's links on the front page. You can't miss them. If you scroll down, you cannot miss them. There are links to download from either the App Store or the Google Play Store. You can listen, and then you can grab both. Grab both of them, because you never know. Sometimes you feel like you want to listen to the blues, and other times you want to feel like you want to be an outlaw. That's how it works. And of course, that is a 24/7, 365 stations. You can listen all day long, night long. You can listen forever for as far as that goes. We put in the programming for all day long, and it is some great programming too. But come and check us out. TGRN.net, True Grit Roots Network, based out of Austin, Texas. All right. So, first of all, I gotta tell you, the left, these leftist folks, they keep trying to like bring the Trumpians, the MAGAs, the people who voted for Trump down on all the socials, and they keep talking about all of these, all of these things. Like they talk about how Trump's, his approval ratings are going down. They're in the toilet. No, actually, folks, the approval ratings of the Democrat Party are in the toilet. They're like running around sub 30s, is what I believe it is. Well, Trump's approval rating has actually risen, and has been hanging out quite at about the halfway mark, the 50% mark, according to this KATV.com. Trump's approval rating hits new high as 50% of voters say that America is on the right track. Oh, these leftists are they are freaking out. They are freaking out about the fact that Trump is doing such a good job. Sorry about that. A new poll that was released yesterday shows that 50% of likely voters approve of President Trump's job performance, saying that America is finally now on the right track. And this is according to Rasmussen reports. Polling has a disapproval rating of about 45% for the president. The polling is the first time in company's history that a majority believes that the country is on the right track. So that alone tells you that, yeah, everybody, we voted for him. We brought him in. We knew what we were getting, and he's doing a fantastic job right now. So, there you go. And he's got, stuff that he's doing that apparently the country appreciates. So no matter what those Democrat morons try to tell you on the socials and everywhere else or on the mainstream media, nope, he is doing quite well. In fact, I have a meme that I say, hey, you know what? As long as Trump is pissing you off, I'm happy. And I put that on there occasionally. It's mostly on X, but anyway. So there you go. All right. Well, some really good news, bad news for the Democrats, but good news for us. Judge Jeanine Pirro has been sworn in as the interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. That's right. She got to a podium on Wednesday and today, and she made an interesting acceptance speech, or at least what I would consider an interesting acceptance speech. But let's go ahead and I don't want to put words in her mouth, so let's go ahead and take a listen to her acceptance speech, if it'll play. Oh, come on. Okay, hold on. Shoot. You know when this happens. Give me just a second. Let me get it back. All right. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Madam Attorney General, both my friends for many years. Long ago, I went to law school to study about justice and to bring justice to victims of violent crimes, women, children, and the elderly. I fought to give them a voice in a system that was both blind and deaf to their concerns. I dedicated my heart and soul to making sure that there was a system that responded to them. My profile and my prosecutorial successes garnered public attention, and my life took unexpected turns. Through all of this, President Trump, you have remained as steadfast as one of my earliest supporters and champions. You never wavered. You were always steadfast, trustworthy, and confident. Today, Mr. President, you bring me back to my roots. And it is a larger arena, but no less an arena where we need justice, where we need to send a message that justice will be honored in the District of Columbia. And just last week, here in our nation's capital, two people on the brink of beginning their life had hopes and dreams that were never realized. because a cold-blooded murderer made a decision to shoot them down on the streets on a cold, rainy night in our nation's capital. This will not go without just accounting. My voice should be heard loud and clear. No more tolerance of hatred, no more mercy for criminals. Violence will be addressed directly with the appropriate punishment. And this city will again become a shining city on a hill in an America that President Trump has promised to make great again and will make safe again. Mr. President, America thanks you, and I thank you.
Well, so it sounds like the new sheriff, well, not the sheriff, but it sounds like she is joining the team to make sure that they are going to take care of and actually prosecute people for doing the stuff that they're doing. Yeah. So, anyway. All right. Well, there. Speaking of the social media, I mean, congratulations, obviously, to her. She's going to be great. I've from what I've heard, you know, from when her speaking and everything and being the judge and so on and so forth, she is definitely a go-getter in that position. But on the socials, of course, because the left doesn't have much to really attack anybody on, I mean, things are going pretty well. Prices are dropping. Trump is making inroads with all of his trade deals. He's made trade deals with key allies, with a couple of key allies. The others have all been they backed off. None of what the left has been predicting so far has been coming true. So what does the left have to do? Well, the left has to go and try and attack somebody, so they decide to go ahead and attack Barron Trump. So in their feeble little minds, their feeble little two brain cells that they can barely rub together to have a actual independent thought, they figured that, hey, Trump's going after Harvard because Barron didn't get into Harvard. And so there's been a lot of pictures running around showing pictures of, like, let's see, Malia Obama, Big Mike Obama, Michelle Obama, and a couple others, things like that. And they're saying, oh, these people got into Harvard, but these two didn't. And they showed, Donald Trump, and they show Barron Trump. Well, the question that was always running through people's mind, because of course, not everybody follows like celebrities and things like that. Not everybody follows celebrities and stuff. And so the question has always run across, and at least my question has always been, well, did he actually apply? And some people have been like, yeah, responding to these morons, like, yeah, he didn't apply. So now we have the answer. That's right. From the First Lady herself. She stomps on this silly Barron Trump Harvard University rumor. Yeah. So Donald Trump obviously has been battling Harvard University over a failure to clamp down on anti-Semitism, trying to do like the whole civil rights thing. He hit him again here with another monetary deal that he's taken away from them or whatever. And yeah, so they're claiming that again, Barron Trump applied to Harvard, didn't get in, and so that's why the president is wanting revenge. You can see one of the accounts here talking about it right here. One of the moron accounts running around saying, yeah, he didn't get in. Well, First Lady Melania Trump shot down the viral conspiracy theory Tuesday that her son had applied to Harvard University and was rejected. Spokesman's calling the assertion completely false. That's right. Completely false. So Barron did not apply. And any assertion that he or anyone on his behalf applied is completely false. So there you go. He didn't apply. So even these morons on the left, they can't even bother to like fact check themselves. Well, wait a minute. Let's be real. They don't necessarily do fact checks because fact checks would actually make it to where they would produce the truth, and they can't stand the truth. They can't handle the truth in Jack Nicholson fashion as Colonel Jessup. So they just make up a whole bunch of crap. And yeah. So, anyway, he just, whatever. Trump has taken a strong stand against the Cambridge, Massachusetts University, yanking grants, pulling visas of all of its international students, and threatening to send those billions to trade schools, which I personally think that would be absolutely phenomenal. However, obviously he hasn't mentioned Barron when talking about it. In fact, his son just completed his first year at New York University, NYU. And he's angling for a business degree from their STEM school. Or Stern School, sorry. Yeah. So, another Democrat fail or leftist fail. Yep. There you go. Well, speaking of all of those students and everything else, this just in. Speaking of students, this just in from the Epoch Times. The U.S. is to start revoking the visas of Chinese students, according to Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. He wrote on X right before I came. Well, this article came out right before I came on the air. The U.S. will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party. So he wrote on X basically today. So yeah, the U.S. will begin revoking visas of those Chinese students, including those with connections to the CCP or studying in critical fields. Rubio wrote on X. This is a breaking story, so we don't have too many details, but bravo, applaud him, because for the longest period of time, folks, the Chinese Communist Party has been sending its students over here, and they have been stealing our intellectual property and taking it back to China, and of course, using it to their benefit. So, yeah. So he's saying the U.S. is going to start revoking those visas. Rubio also announced that he is putting visa restrictions on foreign nationals that are involved in censoring Americans. The Secretary of State said free speech is a, quote, birthright over which foreign governments have no authority. If you're a South Park fan, you would catch that little reference. Anyway, he announced also today at basically the same time, for too long, Americans have been fined, harassed, and even charged by foreign authorities for exercising their free speech rights. Today, I am announcing a new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign officials and persons who are complicit in censoring Americans. Free speech is essential to the American way of life, a birthright over which foreign governments have no authority. Rubio said that foreign nationals involved in suppressing the rights of Americans shouldn't be allowed to visit the United States. He says, whether in Latin America, Europe, or elsewhere, the days of passive treatment for those who work to undermine the rights of Americans are over. Wow. Wow. They are going full bore. And you know what? I applaud them. Once again, this is one of the reasons why the American people are starting to realize, hey, this is an American first kind of thing. Okay. This is America first, right here. You can see it. You can hear it. You can feel it. This is an America first agenda. And doing these kinds of things is going to make America first. Now, what I am really interested in seeing is what happens to those universities where all of these people are getting their visas revoked and they get sent home from the universities. I wonder what the universities are going to do. Oh, I don't know. Maybe backfill with American students, possibly. Those American students that they passed over for the foreign students. Maybe. This ought to be interesting moving forward. Well, speaking of borders and foreign nationals, illegal aliens in particular, yeah, well, Tom Homan and AOC, I've talked to you about this, and let's just let's just remind everybody what AOC was talking about with regards to this next subject here. Take a listen.
And now what DHS is trying to say, again, they're using public intimidation because they know that they cannot come for us all. They know that they cannot come for us all. And recently what they said is that DHS is allegedly looking into arresting members of Congress who were showing up for their legal and constitutional obligation to conduct oversight. If anyone's breaking the law in this situation, it's not members of Congress, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's people like Tom Homan and Secretary Kristi Noem. You lay a finger on someone, on Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, on Representative, or any of the representatives that were there, you lay a finger on them, we are going to have a problem.
Okay, so that's the key right there. She's like, hey, if you lay your hands or fingers on any of these people, we're going to have a problem. Well, I mean, we've already discussed this. When the representatives of Congress showed up to the facility and broke the peace, they lost their immunity from arrest, according to the Constitution. So, yeah, sorry, Little Miss AOC, economics major who used to be a waitress or bartender, depending upon who you are. But, yeah, anyway, she wanted to pick a fight. Well, I think Tom Homan's got something to say about that. Take a listen to this.
Tom, I can hear them now, the caterwauling from the open borders crowd saying, how dare you try to weaponize the prosecutorial arm of our government to go after local officials doing their local business. And you say?
Well, remember, just a couple weeks ago, AOC went on social media saying if we put a finger on any of her co-workers, the Congress people that were at our Newark facility, there'd be consequences. Well, guess what? We did it. I'm waiting on the consequences. But, you know, the mayor's no different. And look, I've said from day one, you can not cooperate with ICE if that's what you want to do, but you can't get in our way and you can't impede our efforts, or you cross that line, we'll seek prosecution. As far as the belonging fund that he's supporting, I have my own belonging fund. We can give housing, food, and free medical care in ICE detention. And that's exactly what we're going to do in Nashville. We're going to flood the zone with agents, multi-agency, FBI, DEA, ICE, U.S. Marshals, and we're going to flood the zone.
There you go. So Tom Homan is basically throwing down the gauntlet and is saying, hey, AOC, you said there'd be consequences. I'm waiting. He's like, I'm awaiting. Yeah, well, anyway, I don't think there's going to be any consequences that AOC is going to be able to do anything with. Because as I pointed out on this program, they broke the peace. And by the way, that immunity is very specific. That immunity from arrest is very specific. It basically states within the Constitution that they get immunity to and from Capitol Hill and while they are doing their job on Capitol Hill. So them showing up in an ICE facility in New Jersey doesn't qualify for immunity from arrest. If you take the literal translation or interpretation of the Constitution, which I do on many occasions, take it for literally what it said. Anyway, so that's happening. It's an interesting battle. We're gonna see what happens there. Speaking of battles, Trump obviously has been having battles with taking care of money. And what he has been doing is things like he's doing to Harvard. He's taking away their money, their government grants. Now, yeah, I've told you on this program, and I've said it on social media, everybody needs to understand that many of the things that the government is doing today that were expansions of the federal government in places such as, Social Security, health care, you start Medicare, Medicaid, and again, healthcare, I'm telling you right now, as far as like the healthcare for the veterans, that's an argument that I would be willing to agree to, because that falls under the taking care of the military, which is a federal government responsibility constitutionally. But outside of that, all of these other social programs that you're hearing the Dems just wailing about, in terms of the big, beautiful bill and all these other things and funding for education, grants, loans, research, all of that stuff, none of that shows up in the Constitution. Not a single one. The federal government is not supposed to be using taxpayer dollars to fund research. That's stuff that should be done in the private sector, or if you really want to push it, can be done at the state level. Because it doesn't show up in the Constitution as a responsibility of the federal government. Therefore, what Trump is doing is Trump is attempting to get the federal government, I'll be honest with you, back within its constitutional boundaries from my viewpoint. Okay? And like Jarhead 13 just pointed out, Harvard has an endowment of over $50 billion. They don't need tax dollars. They just don't. And I agree. They don't need it. Let me go ahead and get this read in really quick, because it happened to light up for me here, so might as well try and get paid here. So I don't know if you've noticed, but right here on my shoulder, right there, you'll see my social media stuff keeps coming in and out, and I have a Truth Social account. You should have a Truth Social account too. The reason being is because it's the only place where Trump points out everything within Truth Social. He talks directly to the public through Truth Social. You want to know what Trump is thinking and everything else, you can just go on Truth Social. And in fact, what happens is oftentimes the Truth Social post gets flooded everywhere because of either leftist lunatics copying and pasting it, or things like X grab it from Truth Social and spread it on his X account. But either way, you should have a Truth Social account. It's a great place for people to go. And if you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, check it out. Go check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories, commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, which I've already been talking about, then you need to get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social. Head on over to truthsocial.com and sign up today. That's Truth Social, all one word, I believe, .com. So anyway, go and check it out. Get yourself an account. It is absolutely fantastic. And hey, follow me once you get there. Follow me. Follow American Perspective. I think it's under @Whiskey Musings, all one word. You can check right here. Right here. Here it comes. There's my Twitter handle. See? It's right there. Twitter handle. Oops, I got to go the right direction. There's the Twitter handle. Just keep an eye over here when I'm on this screen. You'll see all of my socials there. You can follow me on all of those. Anyway, there you go. True Social. Get yourself True Social. Do it today. All right. So Trump's been fighting over money with a watchdog agency. Now, the watchdog agency that he's been fighting with is the General Accounting Office. Now, here's the problem. There actually is, the president actually does have the capability to decline to spend money by Congress. Okay? He can actually decline to spend money appropriated by Congress. But unfortunately, it comes with restrictions. And that's part of the problem. Now, there is an impoundment idea, which actually dates way back in the history of things. And this whole spending thing is possibly setting up yet another constitutional battle for this whole thing. So according to Donald Trump, the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which requires the president to seek permission to rescind or officially end funding, violates the Constitution and the separation of powers. Specifically, what he's arguing is that the chief executive has broad authority to interpret and make decisions about a congressionally mandated spending, including the decision not to disperse that funding. Now, critics are saying that the White House is actually trespassing, or transgressing, I should say, on Congress's power of the purse. Okay? Now, this really dates back, like I said, in legal terms, impoundment refers to a situation in which the president actually declines to spend any money that was appropriated by Congress. It's often been used by presidents throughout history, beginning all the way back with President Thomas Jefferson. Now, what happened there was Congress called for the construction of 15 new gunboats at the cost of $50,000. I wish a gunboat cost $50,000. Anyway, Jefferson decided against it. And in October of 1803, in his third annual address, he informed Congress that the boats remained unconstructed and that the money was unspent. The legislation had authorized and empowered Jefferson to build a number not exceeding 15 gunboats. So in other words, Congress didn't say that the money had to be spent, that he had to buy 15 gunboats. Okay. Now, that being said, it's the way that Congress writes the laws. The laws, essentially, the legislation had basically said, hey, Thomas Jefferson, we're going to give you up to $50,000, and you can spend that money on building up to 15 gunboats. It didn't say that he didn't have to build the gunboats. It didn't say that, oh, Thomas Jefferson, you will spend this money, and it will be done on 15 gunboats. No, it didn't come out that way at all. Now, there have been, of course, some debate over time, and in Kendall versus the U.S., the Supreme Court did rule that there were limits on this idea that the president can impound money. For an example, they basically said, the Supreme Court at the time said that the president could not unilaterally refuse to delegate funding when Congress's intention was actually clear. So in other words, if Congress writes in the legislation, hey, Mr. President, this $1 million will be spent on X, Y, Z, whatever that is. Okay? Now, since then, the issue really hasn't been litigated at all, meaning that many questions, just like everything in our court, in our system, many questions still exist over this idea that the president has the capability to decide, hey, you guys gave me the money, but you didn't say that I had to spend it. So if I decide not to spend it, then I can take it and put it back, right? So anyway, that was the idea. Well, the problem comes into play when we start moving forward toward President Richard Nixon's tenure in office. And you thought that he was only known for Watergate, which, by the way, is kind of like the whole idea of President Carter being the worst president in modern history. Yeah, that's been taken by Joe Biden. And so now this President Richard Nixon and his Watergate has also been taken over by Joe Biden as the worst scandal in American history, him being non compos mentis in the White House. But anyway, I digress. The Impoundment Control Act came into play when Nixon essentially disagreed with the Clean Water Act of 1972, which authorized federal funding to municipalities. Okay. To municipalities, including New York City, to combat water pollution. Now, Nixon originally vetoed that legislation, which honestly, I would agree with him. That is not a constitutionally mandated responsibility of the federal government to do this. But Congress, of course, overrode his veto by a 2/3 vote, which they can when you have a veto-proof majority in that case. After the law was enacted, Nixon then, of course, sought to block the funding to New York City, and that prompted the city to sue. So the city sued in under Train versus City of New York. The Supreme Court ruled 8-0 that Nixon had superseded his authority in refusing to disperse the funding. Congress said that Nixon's actions had crossed from the executive function into the policymaking function, a prerogative of Congress, completely. And many people, including a former federal prosecutor, said that impoundment wasn't really an issue until Nixon made it an issue. In other words, he stood against it. And in response, Congress went ahead and passed the Impoundment Control Act, which is the act that Trump is now looking to get rid of. So now the Government Accounting Office, or the GAO, said that it's investigating various moves that are made by the Trump administration that is supposedly violating this legislation. The Comptroller General and the GAO head, Gene Dodaro, told a Senate panel in April that 39 investigations into impoundment violations are currently open. Now, if any of those investigations yield evidence of violations of the Impoundment Control Act, the GAO could bring a lawsuit against the administration. Now, most of the time, Impoundment Control Act disputes have often arisen between the GAO and the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB. And a lot of times when you see these two regulatory agencies or bureaucracies go at each other, more often than not, what ends up happening is they end up settling out of court. They don't actually get to court. Okay. But here you have Russ Vought, who is the director of the OMB, and he has been an outspoken critic against the Impoundment Control Act and has been vowing to work to strengthen the president's impoundment power in Trump's second term. So, yeah. So in the 1970s, the GAO actually brought a suit against Gerald Ford, who was president after Nixon stepped down, for his use of impoundment in Staats, S-T-A-A-T-S, versus Ford. However, the case was resolved before being litigated. Now, in Trump's first term, he has actually faced challenges from the GAO over his handling of federal funding related to the temporary impoundment of the $214 million that he held back in military aid to Ukraine. So, yeah. Anyway, the act was referenced during the first impeachment proceedings against Trump, although the GAO did not actually file a lawsuit. So the GAO put out a report on May 22nd, pointing out the 39 possible things, and this is the first escalation of the dispute that is going on with the choice of impoundment. So, yeah. Anyway, so that report focuses on the February 6th DOT announcement of a freeze on new electric vehicle infrastructure grants under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021. Again, it's a grant, not under the Constitution. You know, I got to be honest with you. I'm going to take a little side note here, or we're going to get off the rails for a second. But if the federal government, meaning the executive branch, and Pam Bondi would actually go and put forth effort into challenging all of these things through the 10th Amendment, I think we'd actually make a lot of movement. You know, the 10th Amendment in and of itself has not really been a focus of especially recent history lawsuits with regards to the government. It really hasn't been there. You know, I got to tell you, somebody with like Elon Musk's backing, if Elon Musk wants to really make America great again and not just do it through Doge, which, by the way, they won a key thing in a federal court today as well. But if he really wants to make a difference, he needs to hire a lawyer and start suing the government under the 10th Amendment and the 9th Amendment, both, whichever one is applicable for all of this stuff, and start suing the hell out of the federal government and make Congress actually, and the Supreme Court actually, sit there and say, hey, this is or is not in the Constitution as a mandated responsibility of the federal government. And if it isn't, it needs to be rescinded right away. Take it out. You know, if I had the money, I probably would do that, at least for a couple of times, just to see if I could actually get a favorable answer from this split Supreme Court. But anyway, I digress. Continuing on with this whole thing. So the idea here is whether or not there is a constitutional setup with the Congress, which holds the purse strings, and executive authority. Now, Trump has, or the Trump administration has made the case for a broad presidential impoundment authority, saying that it simply is a means for the president to exercise oversight on taxpayer funding, meaning that Congress can't just say, hey, you know what, we're just going to spend this money willy-nilly on stuff that, I mean, they say Congress decides to pass, and this is actually part of my argument with the 10th Amendment as well, but Congress decides to pass, say, hey, we're going to spend $10 billion on lesbian dance theory at all of these universities across the United States. If universities want this money, they must have a lesbian dance theory program in their university to get this money. That's not a constitutional appropriate use of taxpayer money. And so, to me, that would be a great case for the 10th Amendment. But in terms of what Trump is doing, Trump is basically saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm the executive. I should have the ability to basically say, yeah, we're not spending that money on that because that's not constitutional. I seem to recall he stood up and said that he would support and defend the Constitution of the United States as president. Sounds to me like he doesn't have necessarily a tie, quote unquote, to I will spend whatever money Congress tells me to spend, or I will enforce whatever laws Congress tells me that they to enforce. Because what happens if Congress creates it? Let's just set the money piece aside. What happens if Congress basically says, hey, you know what? We don't care about the Second Amendment anymore. And actually, we're going to work around that because we're going to force everybody who has a weapon to register that weapon. I mean, that doesn't necessarily quote unquote infringe. I know this is a pretty extreme example, but the point is that, and they kind of have already done this with the universal background check system, but that doesn't necessarily infringe on the fact that somebody can't keep or bear arms. They just can't have one if they don't register it. Well, what's stopping Congress from basically saying that? And I'd hate for some Democrat congressman to go, you know what? That's a pretty damn good idea. I think we're going to do that. That Rick Thomas guy, that whiskey guy, he freaking told me about it, and I think it's going to be a great idea. No. It's not a good idea. But here's the point. The president does actually have the constitutional authority, in my mind, to basically say, Congress, you passed this law. This law goes directly against the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. And as the executive, I am not enforcing that law, which kind of pulls down to the constitutional sheriff idea. But the point that I'm making is that if a law is unconstitutional, it shouldn't be implemented. And so what Trump is basically saying here, I think, is that the impoundment law itself is unconstitutional. But in my particular instance, what I'm talking about is the idea that the president has a responsibility to rein in, as part of the checks and balances and the separation of powers, the president has the responsibility to rein in a runaway Congress who starts putting out. Now, he has veto capability. A lot of people would say that, yes, that would be, a check. Okay. But what happens if you have a radical leftist Congress in this case, and they have the seats and the votes to override and overrule him if he vetoes it? I would say the veto is more of a first step. And then the second step would be him saying, okay, well, now that you've overrode my veto, and I vetoed it because of the fact that it was unconstitutional, but now that you've overrode my veto, I cannot, in good conscience, support the fact that this is an unconstitutional law, and I am not going to enforce it. See, I think that constitutionally speaking, because he is bound by his oath to the Constitution, that he has the ability to do that. Now, for things that are constitutional and that kind of stuff, yeah, I honestly don't think that would be considered that would be considered something that he can do. He can't stop constitutional monies going to constitutional legislation and monies that are being spent in constitutional ways. But this idea of impoundment, though, should extend beyond that, and it should extend to the point where he could say, you know what? this is unconstitutional. I'm not going to spend this money. Let's fight it out in the Supreme Court, which is kind of how the whole system is supposed to work, in my mind. Now, Democrats, though, are basically saying that, hey, impoundment, it transgresses congressional authority. I say it's actually a check on congressional authority. So, anyway, Patty Murray, who is one of my representatives, she doesn't represent me because she's a Democrat. She wouldn't represent me if she knew exactly who I was and what I was doing. But anyway, she said during the April Senate hearing at which Dodaro testified, she said, from day one, President Trump has unilaterally frozen or contravened critical funding provided in our bipartisan laws. She said that is really not what the Constitution envisioned. Congress has the power of the purse, period. Our presidents cannot pick and choose which parts of a law they can follow. In my mind, actually, yes, they can. It's called unconstitutional versus constitutional. That's the choice. So, anyway. Anyway, we'll have to see kind of where this goes in terms of all this situational deal. But I can tell you that this is setting up for a very interesting scenario. And speaking of the government budget office, I think it's the GAO. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah, the Congressional Budget Office might have, which is the other, that's the other, you have the GAO, you have the OMB, and you now have the CBO. So the CBO, which is a sister agency for Congress, may not be reporting correctly on things like the big, beautiful bill in terms of how much it's going to spend or cost the government. So the Daily Caller, here, I'll go ahead and show it to you. The Daily Caller has this piece where it's asking how a nonpartisan government budget office, which again is the Congressional Budget Office, may be misleading lawmakers on spending as the GOP megabill looms large. So the agency providing Congress with cost estimates, which is what a lot of these congressional people, they go off of, okay, including projections for this big, beautiful bill, has a long history of inaccuracy as well as bias, according to some policy experts and lawmakers. For an example, so first of all, let me explain what the CBO is. The CBO was established in 1975. It was created to provide a, quote, objective, nonpartisan information to support the congressional budget process and to help make Congress make effective budget and economic policy. Now, it plays a key role in shaping what the legislative debates and things like that. But some CBO critics argue that its projections are often falling short of the office's mission. So each year, the CBO produces roughly 600 to 800 cost estimates, including for major legislation such as the Affordable Care Act, the Inflation Reducing Act, also known as the Inflation Producing Act, and, of course, the current GOP reconciliation bill known as the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, the agency's most recent estimate projected that the Big Beautiful Bill would add $2.3 trillion to the deficit over a decade. However, we've got a bit of a problem. Their track record ain't all that great, including several high-profile estimates that have been significantly off base. Viewed by some people are trying to defend them and saying, no, those were honest miscalculations, while others are saying, no, those were purposeful distortions. Here's an example, just in the last 4 years. Here's an example. The CBO initially estimated that President Joe Biden's signature Inflation Reduction Act is what they called it, but it produced it. Anyway, it was supposed to reduce the deficit by approximately $58.1 billion between 2022 and 2031. However, in 2024, the CBO revised that particular estimate to actually include and make it, rather than reducing, it was increasing the cumulative deficit to approximately $428 billion. Now, they attributed $224 billion of which they attributed to the adjusted projections of the Inflation Producing Act's electric vehicle tax credits and revenues from gas taxes. Yeah. So anyway, Republican Representative Ron Estes of Kansas told the Daily Caller News Foundation, quote, "Unfortunately, we've seen time and again that the CBO scores Democrats' spending priorities favorably and Republicans' tax relief unfavorably. The CBO falsely claimed that the Republicans' Tax Cuts and Jobs Act would reduce tax receipts for the Treasury. In reality, the TCJA exceeded the CBO's predictions for tax receipts for more than $1 trillion while growing the economy for everyday Americans." So again, the CBO is saying, oh yeah, we're going to lose revenue. Whereas in reality, and history has shown us, that whenever you cut taxes and regulations, your revenue, tax revenue, actually increases. It actually goes up because of the fact that you have and I don't know if it's a law in economics, but you basically have, when you cut back on the number or how much any one widget costs, and you produce thousands more widgets to keep up with demand, you're actually making more money out of that because you're selling more, and it costs less to produce each individual widget when you're selling thousands or hundreds of thousands or whatever. Same thing goes for taxes. When you cut back on government spending, you cut back on regulations, you open up the engine of the capitalist economy, and you create greater revenues. This has happened every single time tax cuts have come into play in all of history. Taxing the American economic engine does not get you anywhere. You need to reduce taxes, reduce regulations, take the government and put it back within its constitutional boundaries in order to make the American economy open up and start really rolling in the dough. And that, unfortunately, the CBO missed. Now, Estes and other critics say the core problem is the lack of transparency into the CBO's data and their methods. So, notably, the CBO will eventually weigh in to score the Senate version of the reconciliation bill that's currently passed by the House. So, yeah, they're trying to understand what's going on. And so what we have here is we now have, oh boy. I just caught a comment in the chat. Anyway, somebody not getting something tonight. Anyway, excuse me. All right. So, there are, like Representative Warren Davidson of Ohio has introduced some proposals that they are suggesting are going to help the problem. One such bill, which is the CBO Show Your Work Act, will require the agency to make its models, underlying assumptions, and data preparation routines available to Congress. And Representative Buddy Carter of Georgia, Buddy Carter of Georgia has essentially said that the CBO is wrong more often than it's right. Well, I'm sorry, but if the CBO is wrong more often than it's right, I mean, why would you even trust anything that came from it? Okay? Honestly. So Buddy Carter told Georgia, told the Daily Caller News Foundation this. And Carter co-sponsored the Health Panel Act with Estes, which Carter argues will improve the accuracy of the CBO's scoring of healthcare-related measures. So all of this is, yeah. Anyway, it's just, yeah, the CBO. Again, why can't, I mean, I'm sorry, but I got to ask the question. These are like representatives. Why do they have all these different organizations and stuff to do their jobs? I mean, seriously, there's the ones who's supposed to pour through all of this. They're the ones who are supposed to pour through all of the laws and all of the budgets and everything else. Why are they not sitting there? I mean, this is just my question. Why are they not sitting there with a freaking Excel spreadsheet in front of them going, okay, if we change this number, what happens to that number? All of that kind of stuff. I'm trying to understand why we have all of these. So, anyway, Hayden Dubois, who is a data and analytics director for the Foundation of Government Accountability, told the Daily Caller News Foundation the CBO has a difficult task of not only estimating costs of these provisions and the direct revenue implications, but also on how these things in a blender affect economic growth and how that economic growth affects revenue collections. Now, Dubois recently testified before Congress about the CBO's poor track record, pointing to recent efforts to improve transparency, including a meeting between the CBO, lawmakers, and organizations like the Foundation for Government Accountability as a positive step in the right direction. So, yeah, projections of the reconciliation package that hasn't been signed into law yet, by the way, because the Senate still has to deal with it. But they're bouncing back and forth, and they're all over the place in terms of where they're going. So the honesty is, Jarhead probably knows more than me. Jarhead's like, Excel, they're still using Lotus or VisiCalc. I don't know what VisiCalc is. I know what Lotus is, but but anyway. Yeah. So part of the problem that we have, folks, with government is not only the fact that it's so big, but also the fact that they're using stuff that is not accurate. I mean, I'm sorry, but, if you have a advisor who advises you on a certain subject, and that advisor is continually wrong, the smart thing to do would be to fire that advisor. Sounds to me like they need to revamp the CBO. Their track record not being all that great needs to go. Needs to go. All right. So we got some good news, some more good news, and this is another thing that the left has been going off on. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control, has stopped recommending COVID vaccines for healthy children and pregnant women. This is about damn time. Now, the FDA commissioner, Dr. Marty Makary, said there's no evidence that healthy kids need the COVID vaccine today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children. All I'm going to tell you is this. We knew this a long time ago. If you looked at even the death rates from COVID, when COVID was at its strongest as a virus, okay, the death rates for young, healthy children was astronomically low. I mean, you basically had to have a child that had like 4 comorbidities or whatever in order for it to even remotely come close to possibly affecting them. Now, the left is going nuts over all of this. They're sitting here and they're talking about, RFK Jr., he's the one he's against vaccines. Okay, clarification. RFK Jr. is not against vaccines. What RFK Jr. is against the poisons that have been shown to have been in vaccines in the past. He's not anti-vax, folks. He's anti-poison. He's for making absolutely certain that these vaccines are as safe as they possibly could be. You know? And that the side effects are limited, which we don't have any longitudinal data on these COVID vaccines, by the way. So, there you go. Anyway, health officials on May 27th announced that they're narrowing the recommendations for the COVID-19 vaccinations. And RFK Jr. said in a video on the social media platform X, I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC's recommended immunizations schedule, as it should have been. Never should have been up there in the first place. Okay? Never should have. Now, the CDC online versions of the schedules, which they say were published in 2004, 2024, still list the COVID-19 vaccine. So the latest versions of the vaccines that were cleared by the Food and Drug Administration in 2024 were cleared without any clinical data. The CDC previously advised pregnant women and children to receive at least one dose of the currently available formulations of the shots, even if they had previously been vaccinated. Those recommendations, according to Kennedy, came despite a lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who is the director of the NIH now, said in the video, that ends today. It's common sense and it's good science. Dr. Marty McCarty, the FDA's commissioner, added, there's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children. So there you go. So anyway, a query to the CDC was actually answered by Health and Human Services. A spokesperson for HHS told the Epoch Times, where I got this information, in an email that as part of the Trump administration's commitment to common sense, the COVID-19 vaccine will be removed from the CDC's recommended immunization schedule. The HHS and the CDC remain committed to gold standard of science and ensuring health and well-being for all Americans, especially our nation's children, using common sense. Yeah. Right. Anyway, so the CDC has now removed that as part of their immunization schedule. So that's cool. That is fantastic. And yes, I want to. Oh, there you go. All right. Well, in a move by the left, okay? In a move by the left, they started off with this whole, do you know the Abrego Garcia thing, which, by the way, some Democrat moron representative went down there and able to see him just totally neglecting the fact that, no, he's not a constituent. He's not a voting person. He is not even an American citizen. He is an illegal alien in this country who was an MS-13 gang member and got deported. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, folks. The truth came out. But this Democrat moron decided to go down and get his 30 seconds or 15 seconds of fame, whatever it is. I wish it was only like 2 seconds of fame. But anyway, he decided to go down there and talk about his constituents, neglecting the fact that he has actual American constituents up here in the U.S. that he should have been paying attention to. But that being said, one of the arguments about Abrego Garcia was the fact that the left was saying, hey, look, he was under a non-deportation order to go to El Salvador. And so one of the arguments that many people on the right were saying, well, fine, bring his ass back, set him in front of an immigration judge, and then deport his ass to some other country. And that would take care of it. That would resolve the problem that the left was having over the whole Abrego Garcia scenario. Because Abrego Garcia claimed that he couldn't go back to El Salvador because he would potentially be killed by a rival gang, which, by the way, doesn't exist anymore within El Salvador. But that's beside the point. I mean, that's just, those little things known as facts are kind of like, anyway. So, I'm sorry, my chat's having arguments over old computer programming languages. I don't know how they got there, but anyway. Anyway, yeah, they're off the rails. Let's see. If they are off the rails, what is off the rails? Where is that? Here we go. They are off the rails. Yeah. Oh, wait, my chat. Here we go. There we go. My chat's off the hook. They're off the rails. They're off whatever. Anyway, there we go. All right. Sorry, I digress. Let me they got me off. Anyway, so getting back to the point at hand, one of these federal judges has gone and said, you know what? We're going to block the administration's ability to remove illegal immigrants to other countries. So not only did they block the ability to send illegal aliens who shouldn't be here back to their home country, now some of the lower court judges, which, by the way, unconstitutionally, and I think the Supreme Court needs to open up their ears and minds and actually rule on this stuff, but this is unconstitutional. From my perspective, it's basically because Congress created the lower courts. That means that Congress can't create a court that has jurisdiction over a constitutionally created branch of government. But anyway, I digress. That's a whole nother topic in and of itself, and I'm running out of time. But anyway, the Trump admin is now asking the Supreme Court to actually lift the restrictions on deportations to third-party countries. So the lower court blocked the administration's ability to remove illegal immigrants, sending them off to either South Sudan or other third-party countries. So now the Justice Department said on a filing that on behalf of a nationwide class of aliens with final orders of removal, the district court issued an extraordinary preliminary injunction that restrains DHS from exercising its undisputed statutory authority to remove an alien to a country not specifically identified in his removal order, i.e. a third country, unless DHS first satisfies an onerous set of procedures invented by the district court to assess any potential claim under the Convention Against Torture. So they're basically trying to manipulate and make the judiciary the lawmaking branch of what's going on. And so, anyway. The administration said that it had been removing individuals to South Sudan, but it was blocked by U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy in Massachusetts. According to the department's filing, the DOJ's filing, the administration was in the process of removing a group of criminal aliens who had been in the country for years or decades after receiving final orders of removal, despite having committed horrific crimes. So, this is supposed to include people convicted of murder, sexually abusing a child, sexually abusing a mentally handicapped woman. They've received due process, by the way. They've already been processed on all of this. Anyway, so more overreach by federal district court judges who do not have the constitutional authority to do this outside of their particular districts. That's the other argument that can be made with all of this. So, anyway, we'll just have to see where this goes. Eventually, the Supreme Court's going to have to, they're going to have to jump in here and say something. I mean, they really are. They're going to have to do something, because this is just utterly ridiculous, to be completely honest with you. All right. So the whole Ukraine scenario, by the way, has some serious problems. Obviously, Putin is not coming to the table, and every time that he talks about coming to the table, none of his conditions have actually ever changed. So he's showing no sign that he's actually going to do anything about the Ukraine war. He actually, I think, is betting on the fact that the Vances of the world will just get tired of playing around with it and just walk away from Ukraine, allowing him to just sort of bulldoze into the country. And while I'm not entirely sure that's necessarily going to happen, he definitely is right about one thing. Americans have short memories, and we tend to get really upset when we're drawn into these long, drawn-out wars. I mean, just look at what happened in Afghanistan. We had Joe Biden, who essentially just said, yeah, screw it, we're no longer there anymore, and created one of the worst debacles in American history, withdrawing from there because he wanted to get a quote-unquote political win. But anyway, so Trump is looking at potentially doing some sanctions on Russia. And it's a proposal, of course. It's a bipartisan proposal in order to bring some pain to Russia so that Russia will actually come to the table. Don't know how that's going to work, but hey, give it a shot. I mean, Trump signaled over the weekend that he is seriously weighing tougher sanctions on Russia over its war in Ukraine. And that is a potential move that's backed by a bipartisan Senate supermajority, who is eager to force Moscow's hand. Sorry. He first was talking with reporters on Sunday. He said he's absolutely considering new sanctions on Russia. Hours later, he blasted Russian President Vladimir Putin on social media, calling him crazy for needlessly killing a lot of people. Well, for those of you that don't know, there was like a major offensive that Russia launched into Ukraine for this. It's missiles and drone strikes and things like that. Trump said, "I've always said that he wants all of Ukraine, not just a piece of it, and maybe that's proving to be right. But if he does, it will lead to the downfall of Russia." So, yeah. Trump warned yesterday, warned Putin that he is playing with fire and claiming that really bad things would have already struck Russia without his restraint. So, yeah, we're just going to have to see what's going on here with that. Also, too, in other international news, Netanyahu claims that the Hamas Gaza chief, Mohammed Sinwar, has now been killed. He was taken out by an Israeli strike on the Gazan city of Khan Yunis, where he once commanded the town's brigade. So they are pushing forward. And honestly, with regards to Iran, because Iran keeps saying that, yeah, we're not giving up our nuclear weapons program, Trump should basically look at Iran and say, you know what? I've been holding Israel back. I may not strike you because I'm really not interested in striking you, but that I can't control what the Israelis do. And if the Israelis go, well, I'm certainly not going to sit there and stop them unless you guys come up here and join us at the table. Yeah, well, he hasn't done that yet. We'll just kind of have to see what happens with all of that. All right, folks. Let's go ahead and get to this wonderful and sad, honestly, pet of the week. As soon as I can find it, there it is. This wonderful and sad pet of the week. And for tonight's pet of the week, for those that don't know, that haven't heard as of yet, one of my longtime Whiskey Warrior P1s, Amy Jean Viner, she lost, and believe me, she is a fantastic dog trainer. I'm just saying. She does all kinds of things with these dogs. I am always amazed whenever I see pictures and video and so on and so forth of these dogs. Well, one of her prize dogs, unfortunately passed 2 weeks ago, right before she ended up getting a litter of puppies. And so now she has to take care of these litter of puppies, but she went ahead and sent me, with all of her spare time that she has, she sent me some photos and a little bit of a conversation regardless. So this is what she sent to me. This is based off of Livy. Okay, that was that's not her actual name. Her actual name is Bill Gaze Easy on the Eye, and she's got all kinds of like registration numbers and everything here. Livy was originally born in 2015. She unfortunately passed in 2025 on 5/12. She says, I said goodbye to my doo-doo today. That's apparently her even further nickname for this puppy. She says one day before her grandkids are due to arrive, it was sudden, and she was so dehydrated that her organs were affected. Less than 8 hours in terms of passing. Poor Ellie, which is the daughter of Livy, is looking for her mother. Livy loved avidly everything I asked her to do, and she so loved people. She was much too young. And so here is a series of photos of Livy, and excuse me while I get it set up here, of Livy doing the things that Livy obviously loved. So here she is on one of the agility courses. Look at that beautiful dog, beautiful animal. Here she is doing a barn hunt. For those of you that don't know what a barn hunt is, they basically take rats, they put them in some sort of a box, and they hide it in a barn full of straw. And the dog is supposed to go and sniff out where the rat actually is. Here's Livy doing a duck jump. Now, this is where the dog is like a toy or something is tossed into the water, and the dog runs down the dock and jumps off into like a pool or something along those lines. And so she's doing some dock jumping here. And here is Livy as a pup as she was coming up, growing up. No, they definitely not. Karen asks if it's a Belgian Malinois. No, it's a Teruvian. They shorten it to Tervs. There we go. Long-haired version of the Belgian Teruvian or Tervuren. I can't even pronounce it. Anyway. And here she is winning one of her awards. This is GCH, whatever that stands for. Good something. Good dog something. I don't know. Anyway. GCH. I'm sure Amy will put it up in the chat. And here's Livy just grinning at home, hanging out. Here she is just hanging out and enjoying life as a dog. There she is being her lapdog self. We all know how those happen. You get those dogs that just want to be lapdogs. And there you go. Got to cuddle up with their owners. Oh, and there she is. This is the pink lady, pink girls, apparently professionally taken as Livy was a baby. Going nose to nose. Beautiful picture, beautiful shot. All right. So, rest in peace, Livy. Sorry that you've gone so quick, but dogs have the biggest hearts, and I got to tell you, they use all of it. When they love their owners. So there you go. Anyway, Amy, I hope that you have been able to at least come to grips with what's happened. And as you point out in your email to me, she will be waiting for you at the other side of the Rainbow Bridge. So rest in peace, Livy. And Amy, I hope this brings you at least a little bit of closure. All right. Okay, folks, that is it for me for tonight. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you search up the American Perspective channel and make sure you hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget on your way out, hit those thumbs up buttons, or if you really want to, the thumbs down. That's up to you. And just let me know what you think on all of my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, and, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.